It's okay. We haven't started yet.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I apologize a little bit for the late start time here. Technology is never our friend, unfortunately. So my name is Emily Schmid. I am a member of the Sycamore House Episcopal Service Corps. So for those of you who don't know, St. Stephen's here houses 5 different young adults, and we are each working in different nonprofits throughout Harrisburg, doing service work for the year. And so my particular placement is with the Pennsylvania Council of Churches, and I'm working as their advocacy programs associate. So I put together programs like this in order to educate people of faith about different social issues. Today our main focus is on solitary confinement, but I'm going to invite Sandy up here to introduce herself and tell you a little bit more about the Pennsylvania Council of Churches.
I'm, as Emily said, Sandy Strauss. I am Director of Advocacy and Ecumenical Outreach for the Pennsylvania Council of Churches, and I'm actually coming up on my 16th year there. Hard to believe. I've been doing this work almost since I left seminary in 2003. Anyway, the Pennsylvania Council of Churches is the oldest ecumenical state council in the country. We were founded in 1911. And our mission involves service, advocacy, hospitality, all of those things that bring together people of faith in our member communities. And the advocacy part, which is doing this program, is actually one of probably the largest ministry of the Pennsylvania Council of Churches, and it actually goes back to, I believe, the late 60s or early 70s. But we also, if any of you have ever run across chaplains in the state parks, we run that program. We also do the Fruit Belt Farm Worker Ministry and the Chester County Migrant Ministry. Chester County happens to be the largest mushroom producing area in the country, maybe the world, and so we work with the farm workers there. And then we also run a trucker traveler ministry that operates along I-80 here in Pennsylvania. So with that, I guess we want to have, what's next?
I just want to invite Amy up to talk.
Yes.
Thank everyone.
Yes, so Amy, it's nice not to be the one running the show. I love it.
That might have been the elevator.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm Amy Wellen, I'm the Dean at St. Stephen's. And part of our ministry here at the Cathedral is to engage with our communities. So we're really delighted that you've all come. This is a great gathering. We look forward to this conversation, and hopefully we look forward to some changes in the system that seems to be not working well at best. So, Mike?
Thank you. So first I just want to thank all of you for coming. It means a lot that people care about this issue and are willing to give up some time on their Sunday to come speak with us. So let's, we're just doing introductions. Okay, thank you. So did everyone get a chance to sign in too? I just want to double check and get a folder that has a little bit of information, particularly with you, and get some snacks. So I come from a little bit of an unusual background. I have an interdisciplinary arts administration major, and I wrote my senior thesis on a methodology called theater of the oppressed. So one of the main tenets of theater of the oppressed is the idea that we can use theater as an opportunity to rehearse direct action that we want to see take place in the world. And so I'm bringing some of those elements into this workshop today. So don't worry, I'm not going to make anyone recite Shakespeare. But I do ask that you bring an open mind and are willing to try out something that may be new, a little bit scary, and a little bit uncomfortable. And I think those things really are important because ministry and advocacy are also uncomfortable. And so if we're not willing to put ourselves into a position where we might feel unsure about things or a little bit shaky, that's where change happens. And so with that being said, I also don't want anyone to, like, if there's a moment where you fear for your safety or, you know, are genuinely, like, in pain, like, you know yourselves best, so, like, challenge yourselves, but to a point. Again, we're not doing, like, heavyweight cardio or, like, the crazy stage exercises, but it's a little bit of movement. It might feel a little silly. And one of the big things I think that's really important about doing advocacy work is that it happens in community and that it happens in collaboration with everyone. And I don't think we can have a community if we don't know each other's names. So with that being said, I want to invite everyone to get up and we'll do a little bit of an exercise that will help us get to know each other's names. Maybe spread out a little bit if you need a little bit of space. I'm going to set this down. Can everyone still hear me okay? Alright, I'm fighting off a little bit of a cold, so I apologize. So just to start off, we're going to introduce ourselves in the third person, which might feel a little weird, but it helps us to know each other's pronouns. So if you have questions about what that means, basically, people use different third-person pronouns and that they would like to be referred by. So, for example, I would say, she is Emily, right? And so you know that way you know then that the pronoun that I like to be referred to in the third person is she. And then we're also going to do a little bit of movement, just to help us remember things. So, we'll do the movement, but then we will also, so you're going to say something that starts with the same letter as your name that you're bringing to the table today. So I might say, she is Emily and she brings empathy to the table today. And then we add the movement. So I would say, she is Emily and she brings empathy to the table today. And then everyone will repeat it, so that way we get to know each other's names. So, without further ado, she is Emily and she brings empathy to the table today. Michael,
I laughed. He is Michael and he brings humor to the table.
He is Michael and he brings humor to the table.
She is Lois and she brings love.
She is Lois and she brings love.
She is Jan and she brings joy.
She is Jan and she brings joy.
She is Faith and she brings friendliness to the table.
She is Faith and she brings friendliness to the table.
I am John.
Yep. He is.
That is to say, he is John. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I bring,
You can both bring joy.
more joy.
He is John and he brings
More joy to the table.
He is Dan, and he brings dedication.
Who?
Okay, I'm already stuck on mine. She is Ashley and she brings, I'm trying to think of a word.
Neighbor.
Oh, no, that's bad.
Neighbor.
Okay, there we go.
She's Ashley. She brings activism.
She is Becky. Becky brings bravery.
Oh. She is Becky and she brings bravery.
To the
She is Rebecca and she brings realness.
She is Rebecca and she brings realness.
She is Mercer and she brings motivation.
She brings Mercer and she brings motivation.
She is Marty and she brings action.
She is Marty and she brings passion.
She is Chloe and she brings curiosity.
She is Chloe and she brings curiosity.
He is Ian and he brings intellect.
Ah. He is Ian and he brings intellect.
He is Roger, and he brings compassion.
He is Roger and he brings compassion.
She is Debbie and she brings determination.
She is Debbie and she brings determination.
She is Michaela and she brings mothering instinct.
She is Michaela and she brings mothering instinct.
He is Eddie, and he brings encouragement.
And he brings encouragement.
I am Doug, or he is Doug, and he brings discernment.
He is Doug and he brings discernment.
He is Henry, and he brings hope.
He is Henry and he brings hope.
He is Larry, and he brings love.
He is Larry and he brings love.
Alright, does anyone want to be brave and step in the middle of the circle and we'll see if we can remember your name, adjective, and movement?
Eddie and he brings encouragement.
She is
Michaela and she brings mothering instinct.
She brings realness.
Anyone else?
He is Henry and he brings hope.
Oh, y'all.
Alright, that's okay. Just if you forget a name, ask. I'd like to set that up. I'm terrible at names, it's why we have name tags. But just now we all know who each other is and a little bit about what we're bringing today. So now that you're already standing, I'm going to ask that you walk around the space as you're able. Be mindful of chairs, be mindful of tables. Start by walking around the space a little bit.
You're fine.
I just wanted to go beyond the borders.
Outside the box.
Steps outside the circle.
Alright, and when I say stop, stop. Okay. So now, I'm going to say walk, and walk means to stop. And I'm going to say stop, and stop means to continue walking around the space. Does anyone have any questions?
The opposite.
The opposite, exactly. So what I say, you're going to do the opposite of it. So stop. Walk. Okay, so now we're going to add some new commands. Alright, so if I would say clap, what would you do? Typically. Alright, and if I were to say jump, what would you do? Great. Oh, this is offering weird feedback. So now, if I say jump, it's going to mean to clap. And if I say clap, it's going to mean to jump. Y'all good?
Yeah.
Alright, stop. Walk. Clap. Jump. Clap. Clap. Jump. Jump. Clap. Stop. knees, and hands means this. Are we clear? Any questions? All right. Stop. Walk. Jump. Hands. Clap. Knees. Jump. Jump. Hands. Knees. Walk. Stop.
So is that the right sound? That was really good.
Notice how we rotate back.
Walk. All right, so self-elimination now. So if you mess up, like you're your own judge, but go ahead and take a seat. All right. Clap. Jump. Hands. Knees. Stop. Walk. Jump. 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 Clap. Stop. Walk. Hands. Jump. Clap. Knees. Hands. Knees. Knees. Clap. Walk. Stop. Walk. Clap. Jump. Hands. Knees. Knees. Hands. Clap. Jump. Stop. Stop.
Oh, I said that.
Walk. Clap. Jump. Ian, did you just self-eliminate? Alright, so paint this arm right there. Alright, so what was that like? Apart from being a silly theater exercise, what did you guys notice while we were going through that?
You have to really think. Yeah.
You had to really think, yeah.
How deeply wired words are to action.
Yeah.
You had to like not follow your instincts. Do the opposite of what you're
Yeah.
It was also helpful to see what others were doing. Yeah. Yeah.
After a while, you can reprogram yourself.
Oh, interesting. Say more.
After a while, you can get used to walking, stop, and the other way around.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay. What helps you do that?
Repetition.
Okay.
And yeah, just simple repetition.
Yeah, so someone said looking at what others were doing was helpful. Did anyone else develop kind of a strategy to get through the game?
Just pausing.
Pausing?
Yeah.
Okay, like before you react, just taking a minute.
I found that looking into others kind of confused me more because they were doing it wrong. I said, if I'm gonna get it wrong, I'm gonna get it wrong on my own.
Okay, so we gotta make sure we find a good example to follow. Anything else? Okay, so why did I make you guys do that? Do you have any guesses? I think it came up in some of our conversations.
Breaking out mindsets.
trying to make social change. Because we are so programmed to think about things in one particular way, these words have really strong associations with them. We think criminal justice, we picture the current system that we have. We're told like crime equals punishment. And so for me at least, I find this game really useful to start to think about, thank you, ways in which we can try and challenge those things, and so certain strategies we can develop. We can look to other people when we're trying. It's easier to do the opposite thing when you're doing it with other people. Now, if the other people mess up, then, like I said, you have to find good models to look towards. But what were other strategies people said? Just really like relying on your own instincts too, and that the repetition, the more you do it, the more we do the opposite of what society tells us, it becomes easier and easier. And we can begin to like reprogram. I think it's so interesting that someone used that word, because that's a lot of the wording that the creator of Theater of the Oppressed used when he was writing about these exercises. The idea is that we're mechanized in certain ways to think about things in certain ways, and these games are a way of deprogramming, both physically, right, through the movement of it, and intellectually as we think about it. So, with that being said, Shayna, you're a rock star. We have internet? Yay, thank you. Okay, well great. With that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about the way things are as they currently stand in regards to solitary confinement. So. Oh, it's okay. I fully charged it last night. So, or no, this is your computer, but it's got like half. Never mind. It should be fine. Not yours. Yeah, never mind. See this okay? I don't know. How do people feel? What turning on the lights help? Okay. Oh, thank you. Yay, okay. Alright, so for starters, I just want to look at what some people already know about solitary confinement. I think we get a lot of different messages about it in the media and in the news and stuff, so I'm curious what you all think. So we're starting off with some true or false questions. So the first is the threat of danger. So I'm going to say a statement, and then I'm going to ask, raise your hand if you think it's true, and raise your hand if you think it's false. And then we'll look into the statistic a little more. So prisoners who are violent and pose a threat to guards and other prisoners are the only people placed in solitary confinement. Raise your hand if you think that's true. Raise your hand if you think that's false. Alright, so Yeah, so there was a study that was done by by Yale Law School that found that the vast majority of prisoners that are held for 15 days to a year are placed in administrative solitary confinement, which we'll go over more on what that term means, but basically it's non-punitive for non-punitive reasons. Alright, so length of stay. People are only held in solitary confinement for short periods of time until issues can be resolved. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Yeah, so from the same study, the majority, or like the most common sentence in which people are found to be placed in solitary confinement is 1 to 3 months. Yes. Alright. People of color are overrepresented in solitary confinement as compared to the rest of the general prison population. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Yeah, so unfortunately, not only are people of color overrepresented in the prison population, within prisons, there are more people of color placed in solitary confinement than their other counterparts. So you see it's about 5% difference between all prisoners. Due to evidence of its harmful psychological effects, solitary confinement has been classified as a form of torture by the National Religious Campaign Against Torture. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Yeah, so not only does the National Religious Campaign Against Torture is an organization that aims nationally to reduce the practice of solitary confinement, and it has identified it as a form of torture. But then also in 2011, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture warned that solitary confinement can amount to cruel and unusual punishment, and placed recommendations that that have been used as the basis for bills that we're advocating for in the Pennsylvania House and Senate. Solitary confinement helps to keep the prison population safe. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Yeah, so it's, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, prisons with higher rates of restrictive housing have actually had higher levels of facility disorder and higher assaults on guards than prisons who don't use the practice as widely. Policymakers don't care about minimizing the practice of solitary confinement. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Yeah, so some of you have hope. And, the fact of the matter is this has been a policy issue for a really long time, and changes are happening really slowly, but there are some advocates that we have, and lawmakers who are advocates for it, and also certain people who work in corrections are really trying to make changes. It's just that the system isn't really set up to work in their favor, unfortunately. Alright, so the scope of solitary confinement. First, it would help if we identified it. So what is solitary confinement? Typically, we define solitary confinement as isolation in a single cell for 22 to 24 hours a day. So people are allowed out for like an hour typically of recreation, but it's on this like little pen that's attached to the cell. So they're still by themselves in this like little grassy area. Solitary confinement has a lot of different names, so that can become confusing when you're trying to figure out the scope of the issue. So you see, commonly what's called like the SHU, which is special housing units, or the whole segregation. Oh, sorry. And so that's typically how it's defined, and different ways it's been named. The conditions vary from place to place, but typically it involves, so they've classified it as chemical torture chemical torture by the use of like stun guns, tear gas, pepper spray, physical torture in like hog tying, restraints, beating people up, and then also mental torture, so like threats, mental intimidation, and then another, like a huge problem is just the sensory aspect of it. So the lights are on all the time often, or there's noise from outside cells, but you don't know like what's going on. And then another thing is just a huge lack of access to resources that have been proven to help with rehabilitation. So access to seeing family. Oftentimes it's really hard you don't have access to phone calls, and it's often really hard to get access to pen and paper to even be able to write letters. So that's a huge problem. It's the things that would help with recovery are just not given to people who are placed in solitary confinement. So how did solitary start? So what's interesting about doing this advocacy work in Pennsylvania is that the practice of solitary confinement actually started in Pennsylvania, an Eastern State Penitentiary. It was never meant to be a long-term form of punishment, and it was never meant to be used to the extent to which it is today. It started as a practice of literally like penitence. So it was meant, people were placed in isolation for a little bit just to think and repent and to spend time meditating on what had happened that had placed them in prison and on what had gone wrong. But then it actually became known as the Pennsylvania system, and it spread throughout the U.S. And then we see eventually the opening of prisons that were like exclusively designed to house people in solitary confinement. And then I think what's important in this timeline is that the U.S. Supreme Court has really left the issue of solitary confinement up to the states. And so the states get to decide how they want to run prisons in that regard. And now 40 different states operate prisons that are like solely designed to house people in solitary. So it's estimated that between 80,000 and 100,000 individuals are held in isolation in some kind within the United States. That discrepancy is so high because there's, like I said, there's so many different names for it, there's so many different ways in which it is categorized, and there's no, because the issue is left up to the states, there's no, it's not the same across the board how people would keep record of who's placed in isolation, but that's the estimation. And so, like I said, there have been some calls for reform. Most notably, just this past year, New Jersey passed the Isolated Confinement Restriction Act, which is really similar to the legislation that we're advocating for here in Pennsylvania. And since they're kind of our neighboring state, we've been doing some work across the state with them to try and advocate against this practice. So what does solitary look like in Pennsylvania? As of 2016, Pennsylvania had more prisoners in solitary confinement than all but 4 other states. And one of the things that's really shocking and is a huge problem is that approximately 350 people per year are released directly from solitary confinement onto the streets. So the Department of Corrections really doesn't like to do that, but it's still a practice that is happening. So people are coming from this extremely intense environment where they're alone for 22 to 24, or they're alone in a cell for 22 to 24 hours a day, and then are just placed back into normative society. And I've heard stories of a gentleman who, after he was released, couldn't leave his bedroom in his parents' house. So it's really a big problem. We're working to. One of the things that this bill would do also is provide for step-down programs that would allow people resources to integrate back into general population in prison before they are released. And so Pennsylvania is making some changes. They're 2015, the Disability Rights Network sued the Department of Corrections. So now people who are defined as having serious mental illnesses are given resources while they're placed in isolated confinement, and so they have more access to treatment and programming, and treatment units were created. And then also, most recently, so until recently, the policy of the Department of Corrections was to house to house death row inmates in solitary confinement. But as of recently, that they're no longer doing that, because they reached a settlement. And so 136 of the current death row prisoners will be returned to general population. Alright, so in 2015, the United Nations released guidelines for the treatment of prisoners. And it's based off of these guidelines that the legislation that we're promoting in the Pennsylvania House and Senate were written. And so these are called the Mandela Rules. So it's the idea that no one should be placed in solitary confinement for excess of 15 days, and then it would prohibit the use of solitary confinement for women, children, prisoners with physical and mental disabilities, and especially pregnant women, juveniles, LGBTQ persons as well, so anyone who is deemed as like a particularly vulnerable population. Alright, so there are two kind of main reasons for solitary confinement. So one is administrative detention status, and that is often it doesn't come with a set amount of time that you would be placed in solitary, and it is not as a result of any like breach of the guidelines for the prison. So it's not punitive. So we'll just go into this a little more in brief. So there's different kinds. So one is protective custody. So that's like if you are deemed to be in danger, you can ask to be placed in protective custody. One is preventative segregation. So that's the idea that an individual might be perceived to be participating in illegal activities outside of the prison, or might be perceived to be in a prison gang, and so they're placed in isolation in order to contain that behavior, if they would be a risk to the general population. But they still have, they haven't like beat up anyone or destroyed property or done something explicit that would lead to the sentence. And so, this is transitional segregation, so that's if there aren't beds available in general population. When you're transferring in and out of prison, sometimes people just get placed in solitary. And the other one is sort of an in-between period of investigative segregation. So that's there were charges brought against you that you may or may not have done something wrong in the prison. It's similar to pretrial detention, so where you're placed there until either the sentence of solitary confinement is handed down or the charges are dropped, or like other action is determined. And then the last is more straightforward. This is disciplinary segregation. So this is like you destroy property, you get X amount of days in the hole. You talk back to a guard, you get X amount of days in the hole. So the problem with this is that often it's been found that one of the main reasons people are placed in solitary confinement is actually just for something like talking back to a guard. It's for nonviolent offenses. So different populations are affected by solitary confinement differently, but we found that there's an overrepresentation of these particular individuals in solitary confinement. So inmates with mental health disorders, youth, LGBTQ, and African American inmates. So what are the effects of solitary confinement? I think it's important to note that solitary confinement affects everyone differently. But we found a lot of these things tend to be true pretty much across the board. You have increased suicide risk, there's an increased potential for PTSD, insomnia, paranoia, visual and auditory hallucinations, and hypersensitivity to noise and touch. So if you already have a mental illness and then you're placed in solitary confinement, it just tends to compound upon those issues like even more. So what's being done? So there are currently 2 different bills that are sitting in their respective judiciary committees in the Pennsylvania legislature. So House Bill 497 was introduced by Tina Davis, and Senate Bill 832 was introduced by Senator Larry Farnese. So the bills have similar language, but they would prohibit the practice of solitary confinement for certain vulnerable populations and limit the amount of time that anyone else can be placed in solitary to 15 days. And there's also stipulations that you couldn't just continually sentence someone to 15 days. There's like a waiting period in between there. So what can we do to support these bills? Well, so one of the things that's really important is to write to legislators, to let them know that you're interested in this legislation, and as constituents, you want them to support it. And so there's some stuff in your packet that outlines sort of how to go about writing a letter to a representative and how to go about scheduling visits to in-person visits tend to make a lot of impact as well. Another thing you can do is write op-eds. So if you write something to your local newspaper, and if you mention your specific representative by name, oftentimes those things will get picked up by their staffers. And then we'll let people know, oh, our constituents are interested in this bill and have called you out by name. And so there's also something in the packet that could help you guide you through that practice of writing an op-ed or a letter to the editor. And the last thing we can do is go in and visit our representatives directly. I know that doesn't, some people, transportation is an issue. It's not necessarily the easiest thing, but we at the Council of Churches are more than happy to help facilitate that process too. So if anyone wants to reach out, we have your contact information. I'll send up a follow-up email after this program that can help you get in contact with us if that's something you wouldn't necessarily want to do by yourselves, but you need help facilitating that process. We're more than willing to help. I've been on quite a few of them now, and they can be intimidating, but they're also really impactful and interesting. I do think, maybe this is me having too much faith in humanity, but I do think deep down that legislators care, even when they're law and order Republicans who aren't super receptive to what we're saying. So why does this matter from a faith-based perspective? For me, I think one of the fundamental tenets of most religious teachings that I've been exposed to is the idea of love your neighbor as yourself. And I love the signs that we have now in the Episcopal Church that say love your neighbor who doesn't vote like you, speak like you, a million other different things. And I think it's love your neighbor even if they're in prison. And so I leave you with this verse from Matthew. I like it. So for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. So I think it's just a reminder for us to look out for those who are last and least, and who are considered last and least of these by our society. So it's really a radical thing to do, but I think the teachings of our religion require us to think radically. Unfortunately, justice, mercy, and reconciliation are radical beliefs. But I think we can do it when we do it in community. So I really appreciate you all coming out and listening to me speak a little bit about sort of the background of solitary confinement. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry, I'm so sniffly. Yeah.
The 2 bills that you mentioned, I know there have been a couple of advocacy meetings. Those are continuing. How's the receptivity been with the being on both sides of the aisle, et cetera?
Yeah. did get is like for guard safety. I think people are sort of, they acknowledge kind of the inhumane aspects of solitary confinement, but there's a concern about alternatives. And so one of the alternatives we always bring up is the idea of like in-cell restriction. So you can, limit someone to their cell, but they're still around other people and they're still able to get meals and things like that. So yeah, that would be something we get. We also often get asked, like, well, why LGBTQ populations? One of the things we say is that there just is often co-occurring mental illness with that population, and then also they're just so stigmatized within the prison itself. There's no need to like further stigmatize them by placing them in isolation. So those would be the two. Sandy, can you think of anything else that we get like pushback from?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah. If someone straight up said to us, oh, I just don't know enough about this issue to like vote on it, which I respect, but then I'm like, well, here's resources. Like,
Well, sorry, and I think one of the largest concerns is tying the hands of
right,
DOC.
the correctional officers.
Yeah, the correctional officers. That's a real concern. But we would argue that there needs to be at least some decent guidelines, because right now they pretty much operate as they want to do in each
or
prison.
it's just not consistent across
It's not
prisons,
consistent,
right? So
yeah.
Dauphin County Prison has on their guidelines for operation, the max amount of time someone can be placed in solitary is 30 days. But it so varies across place to place. And so yeah, one of the biggest reasons we want to get this in legislature is so that it can be more consistent. Even though like there are progressive policies that are happening, this is why we're pushing for legislature.
The current secretary won't be there forever.
Right, so there's also that. Yeah, Secretary Wetzel has like done some important changes, but
Yeah.
no one stays in their position permanently. So. Are there other questions?
Aren't there studies that show that a kinder place is a safer place?
That what?
That a kinder place is a safer
A kinder place is a safer place.
I think that's not maybe the way to say it, but are
Yeah.
they ignored or they, that's what I feel like.
Yeah, I do know, so we've looked at, there have been some states who have like dialed back there and have like passed legislation like this that would limit solitary confinement, and what we've seen is actually surprisingly like, or maybe not so surprisingly, right? Because if it's less of a hostile environment, you're not going to act out as much. But we've seen like a reduction in assaults on correctional officers in prisons who have dialed back the use of solitary confinement.
You mentioned earlier that you had seen some support within some officials in the DOC. I'm wondering if you could kind of share who those are so that we might cite them in conversations with legislators or in letters to the editor, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm really bad at names, and I also kind of just got here. I still am like sort of, I'm like, wait, who's connected to what part of Pennsylvania? Sandy could probably speak to that.
Who in the Department of Corrections? Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
I don't know that I can name other names other than Secretary Wetzel off the top of my head. But I know that he is definitely interested and has already started to move in that direction. In part, he's been forced to because of the court case on people with mental illnesses and all, but he is much more of a reform-minded person. And I know that the legislators from the meetings we've had seem to have respect for him and have said, is this okay with Secretary Wetzel? So they are cognizant that it's not going to work if the secretary doesn't support it.
Doug, do you guys know anyone that you've worked with in the area?
Well, there's a lady by the name of Lynn Patron. Lynn Patron is the director of the CPSs, Certified Peer Supports, which I am. What she does is go from prison to prison, training people how to effectively facilitate and help the mentally ill inside of prison. I'm sure that she would probably be a resource for anybody that wants to talk about this issue, because she's passionate about it. Never trauma. She's at DOC's public office.
You mentioned a bunch of different ways to do things as individuals. Do you have recommendations for like church groups to do something together that would provide collective action and like also events coming up that you all are doing?
Yeah, one of the things I'm really excited about is that we're in the process of putting together a Lenten devotional so we're calling it like 40 Days in Solidarity. So the idea is to be in solidarity with people in prison to use Lent as an opportunity to reflect upon our criminal justice system. There are a couple of different, Go See Just Mercy as a group. It's a couple different books to do. You can lead book discussions. There's some Bible study type materials that are out there as well that really just kind of focus on thinking about the criminal justice system.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, because of our laws around churches as nonprofits not being able to act directly as church, but there's nothing that says you can't do those kind of forums that Emily mentioned. But also individuals, if there's a group within a church that is interested in going to visit legislators or going together on letters to the legislators, some kind of thing to say, we come together as people of faith. You might want to say what denomination. You probably don't want to suggest that it's your church. But those kinds of things can be really important and powerful as well.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Curious first, have any of you ever been in a prison? Yeah?
Oh,
Know anyone who's been in one? Any interaction with officers? Okay. So, from the time of entry, from the time of contact with an officer and the meeting process to enter into a courtroom, then being incarcerated, it is a traumatic experience. So with solitary confinement, what I'm hearing a lot of is a lot of abuse and mistreatment even before getting into the cage, the hole. I grew up with the term the hole, or the hot box. Is there any repercussions for correctional officers or the guards who are abusing people who are incarcerated, or are all of those stories untold? After watching When They See Us, story about the Central Park Five, who were all innocently convicted, and one who experienced solitary confinement, the things that folks, especially Black men, experience in prison, not to say that Black women and others don't experience it, but we're starting to see more and more in media as well as in documentaries. Is there anything being done about the behaviors directly and not just the box itself?
Yeah. Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't a portion of this legislation also help with the review process for like the education process for placing someone in solidarity?
I don't remember that specifically off the top of my head, but I think it does. But I know that there's been attempts to help to train people more so that they know better ways of dealing with people who have mental illnesses, for example, those kinds of things that have been problematic in the past. But again, it's not, our system has tended to attract people who are much more inclined to punishment and not restoration. So sometimes it's hard
even when you conduct that kind of training, to train people to actually do the things that we want them to do. But yes, there have been certainly attempts to do that within the system now. And I do believe that this actually expands that.
I do feel like it's like such, prisons are such an impenetrable force. I mean, it's private industry now, right?
Not in Pennsylvania.
Not in Pennsylvania.
No, Pennsylvania has no private prisons. They do have privately operated food services and those kinds of, what's that?
As well as the juvenile prisons?
Well, the juvenile prisons or the juvenile institutions are a separate thing from the state prisons. But right now, there are no private state prisons.
Okay, because I know that in Lancaster over the past few years, I mean, we had some really huge cases where people were banking off of the amount of bodies that were coming in.
Well, the county level and other levels, that's a different animal.
Oh, okay.
The state system itself,
Yeah, unfortunately.
yeah.
I do know Dauphin County Prisons instituted trauma-informed care for their guards, so they're all being going through trauma-informed care. And there has been a little bit of a shift towards hiring people who come from more of a human services background versus from a military background. Oftentimes that's how a lot of guards and COs would get their jobs. So I've seen that, and again, like I keep going back to Dauphin because that's the one prison I've visited so far. So I know I can speak to that, but you guys might be able to speak to more of those things. Yeah. Well, that's a great transition, because I was just going to invite you guys up. So I have friends, Henry, Larry, Doug, Eddie, and Kevin, who have all experienced solitary confinement and imprisonment, and so I just want to invite them up to, they're so kind just to share their stories with us today. So this is Henry.
Hello, everybody. My name is Henry Bush. I was incarcerated for 18 years. I was sentenced to 25 years. I received a blessing from God, and He opened up the doors in 18 years so that I can come out and be an angel to somebody else. When I explained my hyphen, my name was Henry, and I bring hope. That is what I do. Well, I have to share with y'all that, first of all, I want to thank Amy, Tracy, and everybody from the United Church. How do you say it? The United Churches of Christ, or United Church. What is the organization? Pennsylvania. I blew it. I admit it, I blew it. I had to stand up because I'm stirred up. Last night, I went to see Just Mercy. And as I sat in that theater crying, laughing, somber, enlightened, it refocused me. It helped me to understand where I was supposed to be at. Because if you got a story like mine, and God opens up the doors and lets you out before, I'm still supposed to be in jail. But I gave my life to the Lord. And if He can use you inside of there, I was always told, do your assignment and then He'll move you on. So it was always one more person I had to witness to, one more person that I may have had to befriend, one more person that I had to show some love to. And then, maybe then, He would give me an opportunity to come home. And that's what happened. I'm here. I'm going to just make this very clear. I'm here. Is there any lip readers in here? Any lip readers? Because I just wanted to see if you could. Anybody know what I'm saying? Oh, thank you, Jesus. Help me right now. Somebody's sitting in the cell right now.
day after day. I'm here to bring a voice to that person. That is why I'm here. Come try. You see, they gave me a job as a peer support. A peer support is somebody that ministers to people that are incarceration, that have a mental illness. And my job was to help them facilitate and navigate this maze called incarceration. If anybody knows anything about mental health, then you know that they don't do good with staunch rules. So they are the people that wind up in these solitary confinement places more than anybody else. And they stay longer too. So my job was to go in there and to try to help them understand and navigate that system, which broke my heart every day because I kept on hearing, they didn't know how to say it, but they were saying, get away from me, get away from me. But what they were saying was, sir, you ever been misjudged or your motives misjudged? Why are you here? Why are you here? Oh, you know better than them. They were just saying, I don't know how we want to do it, but I suggest that we have a watch party with Just Mercy so that we can talk afterwards. So if anybody in this church or any other church can hook it up, I'll be there. I was opened up last night because I've been out for 3 years, and it's a little cloudy what my mission in life is supposed to be. But last night, thank you, Jesus. Last night, it was clearly defined. I'm just a voice. So before I sit down, I want to say this. I'm not one to tell movies to people. I like to let them go see it. So I'll just give a summation. No details. I'm not a spoiler. But one of the characters who was in need of help refused it. I don't want you to be my lawyer. Because he was so beat down. There was so much hurt inside of him. He could not let anyone, because he was saying, but I'm not going to let you. I don't want to get hurt no more. Just leave me alone. Let me go back to that 9x5 cell and just die. But when he seen that the young lawyer really had authentic desires, he said, help me right now, help me right now, help me right now. It finally came out. And the young lawyer, he did everything he could for it. That is what we are. There's somebody out there right now in a cell. And you may be the only help that person can get. But are you listening? Because somebody, when I was moving my lips, you interpreted it. You had to really be watching and listening to interpret it. And that's what we do. She's going to show us how to. Let's start a movement. Let's let people know that these hurting people are people too. And guess what, y'all? They use solitary confinement in this state to get the trouble away from us. Close their mouth. They use it as, I seen it. And one last parting thought. I was in the hospice Now imagine solitary confinement while you're sick. Oh, I had people just stay here with me here for 5 more minutes and talk to me. What's going on? How's so-and-so out in population? They were isolated and they were sick. This was the cruelest thing I've ever seen. And I had to go in there heavy heart every day. Thank you, my name is Henry Womash.
Can I just ask a quick question? How many of you have read Just Mercy? Terrific. If you haven't, it is a terrific book. I started to say an easy read. Easy is not quite the right word, but it's not a difficult book to read. It is a hard topic to read about, but it's a wonderful book, and I'm looking forward to the movie. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah.
I'm not here, on behalf of the movie. That ain't paying me nothing.
No.
I'm just telling you I was touched, and I believe that there should be a watch party. We need to express ourselves after we see something this awesome. That's all I'm saying. Contact me if you want to connect with me.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eddie, and I shared some experiences while incarcerated in solitary confinement. And at the age of 17, I was sentenced to go into prison, and I was thrown into one of the worst prisons in the state of Pennsylvania, Greater Ford, and I was a juvenile, and they threw me into Greater Ford, and I was in regular population. It wasn't in institutions for the youth. So while incarcerated, guys wanted to rape me, guys wanted me to do other things for them that was illegal. So I wound up in solitary confinement. They found out that I was 17 years old, and they said that I wasn't supposed to be in general population, and they threw me in solitary confinement. So my first encounter with the officers, as you had mentioned and alluded to, if it's not on camera, the correctional officers could do anything that they want to do and get away with it, including murder.
Yes, sir.
If it's not caught on camera, I'm gonna be real with you, they can get away with it. So, I was thrown into a cold cell, freezing, this time of year. And I said, CO, I don't have any sheets, I don't have any blanket. CO, I kept calling officers, we called them COs because that was correctional officer. So we would call them a CO. And I kept repeating it because it was cold. So the CO walked by my cell. As you know, the cell is 6 foot by 6 foot. And he said, you better shut your mouth up. And this is my first experience, first encounter with any correctional officers that was negative. And I said, this guy's kind of big. I said, I better shut up. I said, and he had a stick on him that went up and down his leg, one of those billy clubs, like. So I said, I'm gonna shut up. I get some sheets from somewhere. So I had fell asleep, and I remember waking up, and it's like 6, 7 o'clock, and I said, CO, I didn't get a chance to eat. I didn't eat. I said, I didn't eat yet. So the same CO walked by me, and he just looked at me. So later on that night, 3 correctional officers, gigantic, came into my cell. I had to stick my hands through this little slot. They commanded me to stick my hands through this slot. And they put the handcuffs on me, tight, real tight, and told me to back up and turn around and face the wall. So I was standing like this, and they came in,
laid me down on the ground and tore my cell up and said, "You a troublemaker, huh? That's not how we do it in this prison. You want to be a troublemaker." So my first thing was to shut my mouth up, because I got a common sense. I don't have too much good sense, but I had common sense. I knew to shut up. The next day, I made it through the night. I had to sleep under the mattress. We got a cold slab. It wasn't a bed, it was a cold piece of steel, and I had a mattress. So I slept under the mattress to keep warm. That's how cold it was. So the next day, somebody in the next cell said, "Man, you better shut up. They'll take you to the dungeon." I said, "The dungeon?" I was in Mohawk camp. He said, "They're going to take you to the dungeon." I said, "What's the dungeon?" He said, wait, just shut up. So the dungeon, what they did to people, in the dungeon, they would shut like this, and they would wet you down with a fire hose and leave you in the dungeon in Camp Hill prison. And you would be shackled down there for God knows how long, and we may see you later on in population. So after him telling me about the dungeon, I told you I had common sense. I knew to shut up and just try to get through that. So the next day, the same CO threw some sheets, and I said, "Oh, okay, I can get through the night." So I started grabbing the sheets. The sheets was damp. It's freezing outside, and the sheets was damp. I had they give you a jump shoe with somebody else's underwear, somebody else's socks. All this is used stuff that you wear, and it's like really cruel and harsh treatment. And that encounter, I was able to go out to the yard and talk to some people, and I didn't know anything about prison life. So the guys educated me, and they said, "Just shut up, man. You're gonna get through this. Just don't run your mouth." And I was young and ignorant and thought that I could have my way, so I had to learn the hard way. And I took some lumps and bruises in the hole. And my next encounter in the hole, I was put in a mental health center, because as the years progressed, I started, losing my mind in prison, because I was in prison for a long time. And as the years progressed, they threw me in a pink cell. And it was for people with mental health. And in that pink cell, they thought I was going to commit suicide, so they took my sheets and took my clothes, and there wasn't any mattress. They cut the water off. And they used to look in at me, and I was naked and ashamed. And I felt like an animal, because every 10 minutes somebody's looking in at me, and I'm walking back and forth, feeling like an animal because of the treatment, the way they were looking at me, and that made me feel suicidal. I didn't want to live like that, and I don't think nobody else should want to live like that. And my worst encounter in solitary confinement was a guy with mental health issues. They put all of us together. And in this particular prison at Brockview, the tiers go up. There's 5 tiers up. The whole is 3 tiers. So this guy with mental health issues, about 1 o'clock in the morning, he lit his mattress on fire. I don't know how he got a lighter or nothing, but he lit the mattress on fire. Nobody came to take care of us. Nobody. I'm talking about the smoke was so bad, I couldn't see my hand in front of me. And the guy next door said, "Get under the bed." And I still was choking. And he said, put water on the floor. So I put water on the floor, and I grabbed a towel and wet my towel
to try to breathe, but the smoke was everywhere. I made it out of that. But my friend with asthma, he didn't make it. He died. But they blamed it on something else. He died. 2 days later, when we were in the yard, walking the yard, we found out that he didn't make it. He had an asthma attack and died. Nobody came to open any windows or anything. So solitary confinement had me so bitter for so many years that what you're looking at now is amazing grace. This is all God. It was no way humanly possible that I could get out of prison after serving 36 years and being treated like an animal half of those years and not be bitter.
Yes, sir.
So when God touched me, He healed me from all that hatred, all that anger and resentment. So I just want to let you know that God is real and there's still people back there hurting right now from that treatment. As Henry said, help me. Help me. Thank you for letting me share.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Hollis. Before I start, I'll just share this with you. I was at church this morning, and one of our readings sort of struck me. It said, I am the Lord, I have called you in righteousness. I have taken you by the hand and kept you. I have given you a covenant to the people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeons. From the prison, those who sit in darkness. This is from Isaiah 42, verses 6 and 7. Like Eddie and Henry, I did a substantial amount of time in prison. I went to prison at 16, came home at 58. I was a juvenile lifer. And I did my share of time in what they call the RHU, the SNUs, and all those different things. And one of the most discouraging things about the RHU to me was the degree of humiliation that you had to go through while in the RHU. You're locked down, as Emily stated, 22 to 24 hours a day. Yet every time they come to your cell, they want to strip search you.
Yep.
All right, you gotta get buck naked, show all your cavities, all these different things to the corrections officer. And that's for anything you're going out your cell for. Whether it's recreation, medical, visit, and Lord knows you didn't want to visit while in the RHU. Because they took you in a cell, shackled and handcuffed. They put you in front of your people. You're all disheveled. You know, your breath stink, your clothes dirty, the whole 9 yards. But this is what the RHU is for. It is to dehumanize you, to make you feel less than a human being. And unfortunately, many people, when they get out of RHU, they just push them out. You go back out to the inmate population, you know, and prison is not a playground or school. You know, you can get an education if you want an education. But there's a lot of hardened criminals in prison. And it's by the grace of God that any of us made it out without sinning. You know, and I've seen some horrendous things while in the RHU, while in general population. You know, the destruction of humanity is not just seen in an RHU. You know, that's centralizing it. That's just making it more visible, but it happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. Like, Eddie, I seen guys get raped in prison. You know, I remember I had a friend used to say to me all the time, Doug, I'm gonna get that guy. And I said, I leave that dude alone. Let him go, he ain't doing nothing. He said, no, I'm gonna get him. So I went on a visit one day, and when I come back, he said, guess what? I got him. And I'm like, why? Why would you go to the extremes to take someone's manhood just to be, no, I didn't like the way you looked at me. Come on, man. People look at us all kind of ways. None of us are immune from pain. But all of us can be receptive to God's gift. The RHU is not what defines me. Prison doesn't define me. It's the gift of life that God has given me that is defining me. I came home from prison with a desire to give back, to be a blessing, because God blessed me. And I don't believe that God blesses any of us for the sole purpose of blessing us. He blesses us to be blessings to other people. And that's what I hope to do with the remaining years of my life, is be a blessing to other people. To talk about what prison is, so that people can know that prison isn't what it's made out to be. You know, the legislators, I hate to disagree with you, but I don't believe they have hearts. I've dealt with them for many years. I've sat in rooms across the table for trying to get them to do something. Because if they had hearts, they would have compassion for the people. You know, that's what it's about, having that compassion for the people, regardless of what they do. My preacher used to say to me, hate the sin, love the sinner. And that's what it's about. Everybody falls short. Is there anybody in here that hasn't fallen short? We all do. But in spite of the mistakes and the errors that we make in life, there is something there. You know, when I go around and talk to people, I always say, because you have a crack, it does not mean you're broken. It simply means you were tested and didn't fall apart. And that's the message I give to men when I go back to the prisons. And that's the message I give to people when I talk to them. Because that's what this is about. Recognizing that all of us is flawed. But we're here. And we're here by the grace of God. Not because Doug Hollis is special. Not because Henry Winbush is special, or Eddie McQuarrie, or Kevin Smith, or Larry Washington, but because of God's grace. And I'm going to close on this. I didn't see the movie Just Mercy, but I read the book. And the book is dynamite. So if you ever get an opportunity to see the movie or read the book, I would suggest reading them. Now I'm going to do like John the Baptist did. He said, there is one coming behind me who is greater. And there's a person coming to speak to you behind me whose testimony is far greater than mine will ever be. So I give you Mr. Kevin Smith.
My name is Kevin, and I really didn't want to do this. Larry is my sponsor, my mentor, and spiritual advisor. You know, I don't know. I just wanted to forget about my experience. I'm under mental health. I suffer from mental health. So I was one of the mental health patients, and I can personally share my experience how the mental health is treated in solitary confinement. I spent 4 years straight in solitary confinement, lockdown 23-1. And what I want to share about, because it was talking about what is like the effect that solitary confinement has on you. And like the guys were sharing, you know, can say for my experience of being under mental health, it was more like different on the punishment and treated that was afflicted upon me than like just regular population inmates. And we was like, the mental health was like, it was like a gang for the officers or whatever, the thing that they did to us. It reminded me of like slavery. And I remember seeing slavery, and that was my first time ever upstate too, you know. And when I went upstate, what I come to find out that a lot of stuff that I experienced, and when I look back like at my childhood, it was like based on things that was afflicted upon me in my childhood or where I come from, even before I got upstate, that I wasn't aware of when it comes to mental illness, post-traumatic stress, and things like that. So when I got upstate and they put me on the mental health block, I was a child that I was bullied. So when I seen how the inmates, you know, of us being under mental health, how they was being treated, and by me being bullied, I was the type of person that I would take up for other people that was weak and couldn't take up for themselves. I'm an ex-boxer from North Philly. I used to box. So, most of my life I dealt with situation problem physically. You know what I mean? So when I was taken up for the inmates, you know, they began to treat me a certain way. And they would lock me in my cell and things like that. You know, and they would harass me, like when you come out to the day room on TV, they would harass me and wouldn't give me the time that I needed in the day room and like force me back. So I'm also a child, I grew up hating authorities, so I was very rebellious and stuff like that, you know, and I couldn't understand why they would treat me like that. So I became rebellious. And what happened one day, the officer was choking me. And I mean, he was choking me to like, I was getting ready to pass out. Where I come from, I live in North Philly, and where I come from, I never experienced a white person putting their hands on me. You know, I never understood racism and prejudice because, you know, I really never experienced that in my household, but, you know, I have experienced that. But the mental state and me being under mental health, you know, all I knew is like, when this officer take his hands off me, I'm gonna kill him. You know what I mean? Because of like where I came from, my beliefs and stuff like that, that like, you know, we would never allow that where I come from. You put your hands on, you know. So like that's the state of mind I was in. And the reason why I'm sharing all this, I'm sharing how I became incarcerated in solitary confinement for 4 years. And that's when officer let me go, I broke his jaw, and I tried to like really kill him. You know, because my mental illness is like I locked into another state of mind. You know what I mean? And but what I didn't know at that time, how they was going to come back at me. And when they came back, it was like a bunch of them, you know, they were like in ninja suits. It looked like ninja suit, shield and all that, you know, and like, they beat me unconscious, you know, and when you put your hands on an officer, they beat your hands up and stuff like that. But he talked about me being under mental health. They put me on stuff called food loaf. Food loaf is something that they take all your food, milk, every day, and they bake it. Now, my psychological state of mind, based on my mental illness, I went into like paranoid, schizophrenic, insecure state of mind. And my mom would tell me they trying to poison you. So I wouldn't eat, and I wouldn't eat for days like that. It was time when, like he said, they stripped me buck naked in the wintertime. They cut the heat off, had an air conditioner on, left me buck naked in a cold cell. It's just a metal bed. And what they did, they cut my water off, my water supply off. So I'm drinking water out of the toilet to survive. You know, it was like the psychological thing, like she was saying, it's the psychological thing that by me being under mental illness, it was the thing that the officer would say to me, we're gonna hang you and all this stuff. We're gonna take you back and you know, stuff like that. You know, and that's what made me reflect back like to slavery, you know. But the main thing is like, what I came to understand is like, a lot of stuff stemming from my childhood, being sexually molested, psychologically, all this stuff came from my home. I come from a family of 21. My mom had 21 kids. My mom was a big drug dealer. All my brothers and they was heroin users. And this is what I came to understand at the time when I was incarcerated. It was like all these unaddressed childhood issues that wasn't addressed, that kind of triggered my experience of things. It triggered these things. And based on my mental illness, you know what I mean, that what made me react the way that I was reacting, not even being underaware, because at the time I wasn't educated on my mental illness. I wasn't educated on bipolar, manic depressive, paranoid, schizophrenic, post-traumatic stress. These are the things that I experienced before I even went upstate. But when I came to find out through research and educate myself on my mental illness, what was afflicted upon me triggered this, my mental state of mind. You know, and the more I act out, the worse and worse I was treated. I just want to speed it up. The last episode that I had, I was in Frackville. They beat me real bad, put me in the SMU. When they put you in SMU, you're in there by yourself, buck naked, you know, and stuff like that. What they did, they got a court order to send me to, back in the day it was called Farbu, but it was Waymart. They sent me to Waymart. That's State Mental Hospital, you know, and you don't even want to, like, kind of imagine what they do up in Waymart. You know what I mean? They have a different method. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, Willie Lynch Let Make a Slave. You know, they specialize in, like, how to break the mental ill. You know what I mean? That, like, is out, you know, of control. But I'm just sharing with y'all the reason why I was out of control based on my childhood issue and my mental illness that I wasn't educated and aware of. You know, but the way that they treated us, it still was cruel and unusual punishment. You know, and I'm talking about the way they treat the mental ill. He was talking about people I've seen when I was up Crescent, if anybody know about Crescent, they shut Crescent down. And the reason why they shut Crescent down, because they was killing inmates. And if anybody know about Crescent, it was for the tuberculosis people, and they burned them. They had a furnace, and they burned the inmates in that furnace. That's why they closed Crescent down. They had so many lawsuits on them for the way that, and the mental health, I've seen them torture mental health patients to the point, psychologically and mentally, they wasn't able to handle it, and most of them hung up in their cells, and they left them there. I've seen this. I've seen the cries of inmates, and it's a painful thing when there's nothing you can do to help nobody. And that was the painful thing that I went through, that nobody was able to help me. You know, and that was the thing that like kind of broke me, because I realized that I'm fighting a losing battle, because there's, you know, no way I can win this fight. See, and that's where my mental state was. that I refuse to surrender based on how I was brought up, based on my belief. But when they sent me to Farville, that broke me because what they did, they had strapped me down one time and they stuck me in my butt with whatever. And when they stuck me in my butt, they had me strapped down, legs and arms. And I lost all control of my body functions. I pissed, shit. And they left me like that and my neck locked. And I was drooling and stuff like that. And like for 3 days, I like mentally was going. I was just mentally going through whatever they would shoot me up with. You know what I mean? And that was my experience. And like, you know, I was telling Lad, you know, like last time I came in, I didn't want to relive that. You know, but Lad, you know, kind of helped me, you know, some of the other guys, you know, that you need to share your experience. You know what I mean? Because they talk about their experience, but I'm under mental health. And that's why they wanted me to share my experience with y'all. How they treat the mental health is totally different. And they get away with it. You know why they get away with it? Because we're in the mental health. We're a threat to ourselves, to the inmate, and to population. That's how they consider us. You know what I mean? So that's why they can get away with it. They can kill us and say, he was in this state, and that's why we had to restrain him like that. You know what I mean? And that's how they get away with it. The same way like the police get away with killing, you know, the black youth in North Philly or whatever. We felt like they was a threat. You know what I mean? But we can't use that excuse. You know what I mean? We can't use that excuse. So, you know, I don't know. But if this, you know, help anybody, you know, and, my whole thing was that, you know, I seek God out, you know, and today, I'm not president of racist. I was locked in the mental state that I was gonna kill all white people when I get out. I'm just being honest with y'all, the state of mind I was in, based on what was inflicted upon me. I had no faith and trust in white people. You know what I mean? And then, you know, I experienced racism. I lived in Williamsport. I experienced racism up in Williamsport. And now, this wasn't taught to me at my home. It was all type of nationality of people who was heroin users that came to our household and lived with us for periods of time. And we had to dress them as aunts and uncles, regardless of their nationality. And majority of them was white people that was coming from different places at that time, you know, to buy heroin from my mom. They was coming from like different places. You know what I mean? But the majority of them was white people, and my mom had us address them as aunts and uncles. So I didn't know nothing about racism, but when I experienced it, it blew my mind. When I first experienced racism before, because I never knew nothing about that. It wasn't learned in my home, and so today, through educating myself on a lot of things, learned behavior, ignorance, and stuff like that. So these are the things that I begin to do, you know, and, you know, that make me think of Malcolm X, you know, re-educate myself. That's what I did. And through the help of other people that like kind of spiritually and mental mature, you know, to lead and guide me, you know, because mental illness is a serious thing. And if it wasn't for other people and me, loving God the way that I do, being re-educated through the Bible and stuff like that, you know, I would have never survived out in society when they released me, because they didn't rehabilitate me. I rehabilitated myself, because they released me straight from the hole. Yeah, they released me straight from the hole. And if I wouldn't have rehabilitated my mental state through reading the Bible and things like that, educate myself, looking certain words up, looking my mental illness up and studying my mental illness, society would have been in trouble with a person like me based on what was afflicted upon me, and the cops wouldn't have cared. They'd have just killed me. And I wouldn't have probably even cared.
Good job.
You know? Thanks for allowing me to share.
Thank you.
I was incarcerated. But I had a unique experience because I lived in the jail in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and I ended up working in the jail. And one of the things about prisons is the 3 C's: care, custody, and control. That's the goal. Care by any means necessary. We was talking about being in the hole, and I was telling somebody earlier that if somebody offended me, I would put them in the hole under administrative custody. Administrative custody, I have power and control over the situation. But being that I think therapeutically, I would put them in there under therapeutic purposes. Like, in other words, until they change their behavior. It was a therapeutic tool. But most people do it for punitive purposes, because then it's all on them. A CO could put a guy or a woman in the hole and for administrative purposes, and they can stay there forever. As opposed to a disciplinary issue, if they place you in the hole or in solitary confinement, a disciplinary issue has a beginning and an end. There's a timeline. Policy mandates that there's a timeline. But if you do it administratively, there's no timeline. So, I grew up in New York. I was in jail in Rikers Island. I've been involved with the criminal justice system for about 50 years. So, I was in Rikers Island, New Jersey, all the Philly jails, Gratis, Fort Campbell, Delaware County, Northampton County, Yardsville, New Jersey, Annandale, Middlesex, and then I ended up working in the jail. Now, I believe that God wanted me to go through that experience in order to have the compassion necessary for the people he wanted me to serve. And I got a book to back it up, the book of Philemon. That's an illustration of reentry in the Bible. When Paul is writing that letter to Philemon about Onesimus, that's reentry in the Bible. The Lord gave me that. And that shows that you can be restored in your incarcerated state. Because that's what Paul did. He brought restoration to that man's life while he was incarcerated. I was in the hole. Let me just give you one experience I had. I always thought I was a political prisoner anyway. That's what I always thought. I was in the hole over in New Jersey. I think they put me in the hole in Annandale. I was 23 or something like that. And I was going to school, and I was real happy. I was going to get my GED. Even though I was fighting it, I was going to have some teachers that were mentoring me. So I went for my GED, and I was smoking a cigarette inappropriately at an unauthorized area. So they sent me to the hole, and while I'm going there, the COs told me this is how they dealt with me. They didn't physically beat me up. They said, "You know why you're going to the hole, right?" I said, "No, because you're stupid. You're stupid, that's why you're going. You can't think right." So here I am, I'm going to school, and I'm building my intellect, and I'm becoming academically astute, and they tell me I'm stupid. So I'm in the cell, I'm crying, I'm real sensitive anyway. I'm in there, I'm crying, and I'm quit. That's what I'm telling myself. I'm not doing nothing. They want to see who I really am. Like Kevin was saying, I had PTSD before I got to jail, post-traumatic stress disorder. You don't have to be in the military, just grow up in the hood. Just grow up in a dysfunctional family where your father beat your mother. You get PTSD, So anyway, it comes back, and I'm like, I'm giving up, I'm done. And when I came out, I told my teachers, thank God for loving teachers. And they were Caucasian, but I say thank God for them, because they nurtured me back. So I went back to school and continued and got my GED. Right now I have a Master's in Human Service from Lincoln University. What I used to do, there was a tool that you could bring justice to the unjust while incarcerated, and that tool was called the 1983 form. It was a federal lawsuit. I used to walk around the prison with the 1983 form and the inmate handbook. And what happened is, they deemed the 1983 form as frivolous, and they added a fee to it. It used to be free. So when they added the fee, you know, most inmates don't have money, so therefore they can't afford to file a lawsuit.
Yes.
So they stopped filing. So it just went unnoticed. Right now, I'm retired from Cumberland County Prison. That's where I worked for 24 years. I retired as a case manager. I'm working with Sound Community Solutions. I'm the senior coordinator. We do mentoring around the state of Pennsylvania. And me and Douglas. Douglas was my walkie in 1976 and 77 in Canterbury State Prison when he was a juvenile. I met Henry when he got his 25 to 50 as a staff member. Matter of fact, he got a time cut because Royce Mars, who is now the judge, who is a friend of mine, gave me case law to help him get his time cut. And he got his time cut from 25 to 50 to 20 to 40. Yeah. So, and Kevin didn't say this, but Kevin got 5 years clean. He doesn't use a drink or a drug. When I first met him, and he was, I was trying to push medication on him. And the word says, in all you're getting, get an understanding. I'm also an elder in the church too. And get an understanding. So I had to try to understand what he was going through. And at the time, he was living in North Philadelphia. And he used to walk from North Philly to Camden, New Jersey. And the Lord let me know that that's his therapeutic process for his mental illness. That's what's sustaining him. And I needed to get out of the way and allow what he's doing to work for him. You know, and here he is now. You see, he's still here. He's still here. You know, it's not one shoe fits all. When it comes to that, it really ain't. You know, he's seeing the counselor now and all that, but before he just, because of his experience, he didn't want to do it. But now he's doing it. I'll tell you, this is big. The administration that's in office now is a great administration. I'm talking from the governor all the way down to Secretary Wetzel. Secretary Wetzel is the one that changed the wording. It used to be ex-inmate, ex-offender. Secretary Wetzel said, I want you to now call them re-entrants. And re-entrants defined as returning citizens. Why? Because if you call them something different, maybe you treat them differently. That was his mindset. And now he's starting to recruit from, instead of going to the Army and the military to recruit, he's looking for people with a sociology or psychology degree to start working in the prisons. Why? So people who understand people. He wants people who understand people. Me and Douglas, we was up Smithfield and Huntington a couple of weeks ago with Lieutenant Governor Featherman and Secretary Brandon talking about pardon and commutation. Lieutenant Governor Featherman is what you see is what you get. I mean, he's a straight guy. The guy, I really like the guy. I'm gonna just tell you, when we got to the institution, they were frazzled. That means that the administration, they didn't know what to do because the lieutenant governor's coming, you know, status, right? And the superintendent said, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? He said, listen, miss. He said, you run this prison. I came to speak. Continue to run the prison and let me speak. I was like, wow, that's humility. He could have said, well, I'm the lieutenant governor, I need five bottles of water, and can you go get me some pretzels and chips, you know, and don't even eat it. Just get it because I can do it, because I got the power and the control. Well, he's not that guy. He don't play games like that, and I love being around him. I do. I mean, we even went to his office one day and spoke to him. Now, he might be a Christian, but he don't use the language we use. But, so it's here. Change is not on the way, change is here. What we have to do is insert ourselves into the process of the change that's going on. And I say, you find your way into there, wherever that is for you. And you don't have to necessarily go into the institutions like me and Doug and Eddie and Henry might do. Maybe yours is out in the community somewhere. Maybe yours is just with your children, maybe in your, the Bible says, and I like that because somebody mentioned it earlier, love your neighbor like you love yourself. But my question is, who's your neighbor? Who is your neighbor? Well, for me, my neighbor is whoever's next to me. Wherever I am at that particular time, whoever's next to me is my neighbor. So my wife potentially could be my neighbor because she's next to me. So everywhere I go, when I go in the store, that's my neighbor. Everywhere I go. So for me, I tell the guys in prison, I says, you want to change your community. What is community defined? Community is a group of people with similar belief systems. So before you change community out in the world, out in society, you got to do it in here. If you're not bringing change on your block, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. So my stuff started while I was incarcerated. I started going to school, taking up college courses. They stopped it now, but it's coming back. Sociology, public speaking, and all of that. And I continued when I got out, years later, but that's what I did. So in closing, I'm gonna just say, become a part of the solution. And not necessarily, you don't have to join anything. Just by the way you live your life, you could be a part of the solution, because you'll be an attraction. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much to our speakers for sharing their stories. We are a little bit past 3 o'clock, so if people need to go ahead and invite that. But if not, Amy, can we hang around the space for a little bit? Cool, so I'll just open them up to like casual. If you want to ask questions, if you guys are okay with that, and we can mingle. But thank you all so much for coming out. I really appreciate everyone's time and attention to this important issue. There is a feedback form in your folders. If you have a chance, you can stick around and fill it out now. I would love that. But if you need to run, I'll also email out an electronic version. This was really helpful to us to get feedback. So yeah, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
I'd like to just say one thing, and it was something that Doug said that prompted it. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Leonard Cohen, now the late Leonard Cohen, but, and I can't remember exactly which song, but you were talking about having cracks. And this particular song, he speaks to that and he says, it's the cracks that let the light in. And I thought that is really sort of what you didn't say it quite that way, but that was, I think, a thing that we need to think about. We all have those cracks. We need to make sure that we're not just papering them over so the light can't come in.